All right, guys. Hey, 9.9. I'm only going to go over the two examples, example 1 and example 3, and that's all I'm going to expect you to do on your homework and your test as well for 9.9. And we're looking at two core skills: adding and subtracting different functions, and then multiplying two different functions together. So those are the two things that we're going to look at today. Real quick review, you guys. Whenever we are adding terms together, okay, adding or subtracting, remember the only way we can combine to combine terms, if we're adding or subtracting different terms together, is if they're like terms. So a little bit of a new I guess notation for us would be the f plus g thing, f plus g of x. All this means is to take the f function, right, and then add it to the g function at x, or just keeping it in terms of x. And so to make more sense of that, and then you're combining like terms. To make more sense of that, let's look to see what it looks like. Okay, so what f and g looks like, it's just another name for y. Like f of x and g of x is just another name for y. But the reason that we like to use this f and g of x is because we might want to talk about two different functions. And now you can see like it's really easy to talk about the f function and the g function if you label them different. So f and g doesn't mean anything other than, don't even worry about it. The f of x is like the function evaluated at x. They started using g and other letters just so that they could talk about different types of equations or different functions. Okay, so let's do this. Example 1a, sorry for the siren in the background there. So for example 1a, we have f plus g of x. So we're just going to take the f function, okay, so the f function is this guy, and we're going to add it to the g function, this guy. So take the two things, add them together. Okay, so let's do that. Let's take 4 to the x plus 1 and add that to 5x squared plus x minus 1. Okay, so if we're adding this, we're just combining like terms. All right, so there's no other term that has the something to the xth power. So 4 to the x is all by itself. Then I look at the 1. We have a positive 1 here, and we have a negative 1 here. We can combine those terms. 1 plus negative 1 is just 0. So these actually end up going away. Then we have 5x squared. It's the only x squared term, so I'm going to keep it just like it is. And then we have x, right? So there is our answer to f plus g of x. Then for 1b, they want us to subtract the 2. So it's going to look a little different. We're going to take the f function, which is 4 to the x plus 1, and then we're going to subtract the g function. Now, a lot of people get this subtraction messed up. They mess up a sign here. So let me go over this again. If we're subtracting this whole function, we can think of it as distributing a negative 1 out to each of these pieces. Okay, so we're just going to change all the signs, right? And then we'll take it out of parentheses. So my next step would look like this. 4 to the x plus 1, that doesn't change. But then I'm going to distribute a negative to every piece. So instead of positive 5x squared, we're going to now have a negative 5x squared. Negative 1 times x would just give me negative x. So notice I'm just changing the signs. All the signs changed, and then this negative sign goes away. Okay, because I distributed it out. Okay, now that I have this, I can combine like terms. The only thing that I can combine, though, is this 1 and this 1. Everything else is not like terms. Okay, so when I do combine those, I get a 2. 1 plus 1 is 2. Okay, so these are now taken care of. There's no other term that's to the x power, so I'll keep 4 to the x. No other term to the x squared, so I'll keep the negative 5x squared. No other term that is just x, so I will keep it like that. And there is our answer to f minus g of x. So let's just take the f function, subtract the g function. Okay, so that's your first example. Example 3, and example 2 is just an application of example 1, by the way, but example 3 is talking about multiplying two functions together. So now we're saying take f function and multiply by g function. So a lot of what we're doing with this is going to be like foiling, right, where we distribute our stuff from the f function out to the g function. So I'll go over that again. So let's do that for 3a. So on 3a, and I'll zoom in here so you guys can get a better visual. Notice what they're asking us to do. They're asking us to take the f function and multiply it by g. So here's f, here's g, right? I'm going to take those functions. I'm going to take 3x minus 2. Notice I'm not including this as part of what that's the other thing I see is sometimes I'll see people try to plug this in somewhere. I'm just taking this function, 3x minus 2, and I'm multiplying it by the g function, right? So 4x squared plus 5x minus 1. So I'm going to do that. 3x minus 2 multiplied by 4x squared plus 5x minus 1. So little refresher here. We are multiplying the two pieces together, so I have to distribute everything out. So I take the first 3x and distribute it to the 3 parts of the second equation, the g function. So when I do that, 3x times 4x squared gives me 12x cubed. Notice 3 times 4 is 12. X times x squared is x cubed. Okay, 3x times 5x gives me plus 15x squared. 3x times negative 1 gives me negative 3x. Okay, so now we're done with the 3x. We move on to the negative 2. Negative 2 times 4x squared is negative 8x squared. Negative 2 times 5x is going to be negative 10x. Negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2. Okay, so now I've done my distribution, and I'm now combining like terms. Okay, so here, there's nothing that's in common. There's no like terms with x cubed, right? So I'm going to keep that 12x cubed. This is done. But the x squareds, there's 2 of them, so I'm going to combine them. 15 minus 8 gives me positive 7x squared. Okay, and then for x, we have 2 of them. So negative 3x minus 10x gives me negative 13x. And then we have our plus 2. So there's our answer. Sorry, let me fix the box there. So 12x cubed plus 7x squared minus 13x plus 2 is our answer. And then let's go to 3b. Now this is a little bit weird, you guys, because 3b, I'm not thrilled about how they're teaching this to you here, but I'm going to roll with it. So for 3b, they are going to have you combine the f function, which is 3x minus 2, with the h function, which is an 8 to the x plus x. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just FOIL it out like I've been doing, 3x minus 2. I'm going to multiply that by 8 to the x plus x. Okay, so I'm still just going to FOIL it out, all right? But when I FOIL it, the answer is really weird because 3x times 8 to the x can't really be simplified much, and so we just leave it like that. So we just leave it like this. So it's just 3x, I'll use parentheses here, times 8 to the x. We'll just leave it in parentheses, just like that. You can't combine it. Okay, and then take 3x times x, and we get positive 3x squared. Okay, so I just distributed. Then here, negative 2 times 8 to the x, we'll just, and again, I'm just going to leave it like this, negative 2 minus 2 times 8 to the x. And then negative 2 times x just is negative 2x. Okay, don't try to combine any like terms here. This is actually your answer. You can leave it just like this. I don't want you to try to combine these exponentials because in fact you can't combine those. They're technically not like terms because we have this x here and no x here. So I know that's a little bit weird, but just leave it like that. Don't worry about combining the exponential pieces. You're done. Okay, let me zoom out here real quick. Zoom in here on 3c, which is taking h times g of x. So again, this is weird because the h function is this exponential, right? So I'll take that exponential and I'll multiply it by my g function now, which is this guy. But again, when I go to multiply this out, don't try to combine it, okay? Because typically you can combine when you're multiplying, but not with an exponential. So with an exponential, this just becomes 8 to the x times 4x squared. Okay, and then we have plus 8 to the x times 5x. And then we have minus negative 1 times 8 to the x. That you can combine because there's no x term here. So it's just minus 8 to the x. Okay, so now we're done with this guy, and we're going to move on to the second part of this, which is distributing the x out, which is a lot cleaner and nicer. So x times 4x squared gives you plus 4x cubed. x times 5x gives you plus 5x squared. X times -1 gives you negative x. Nothing can be combined here. So we are actually done at this point, and that is it. Again, I don't love that they're throwing these exponentials in there with these while you guys are learning this, but just know that when you have an exponential, just don't try to combine it unless you have the exact same terms along with the exponential. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. I know you guys probably have a couple questions about that when we come back to class, which is fine. But go ahead and get started on your homework, which is attached to your note sheet. So I'll have that posted for you guys, and we'll talk to you guys next time.